guys, what's up? I'm back. I'm so excited for today's video because finally, for the first time in forever, I'm gonna have a book review in this channel. And the first book is gonna be My Lady Jane by Cynthia Han, Brody Ashton, and Jodi Meadows. So My Lady Jane is a historical fiction with a twist. The writers actually tried to get something from history. This story follows a girl named Lady Grey, and she is engaged to this person called Lord Gifford, and we know that's not his actual name. And soon she found herself a queen of the country for only 9 days because, as the history tells us, she was beheaded by her cousin called Mary, and she was supposed to be the rightful heir to the throne. Now that is what actually happened in history, but of course, we don't want just a repeat of that in this book. So in this version, there was this group of people called the Ethians, and they are people who can transform into animals at will, and of course they can transform back. Then there's this second group called the Verities, who are people who look down on the Ethians because they think it's an abomination of nature. So the royal family used to be Team Verities, but then suddenly King Henry VIII became so angry one time, and then he transformed into a lion and practically ate the court jester. Now, of course, when King Henry discovered that he was an Ethian, he declared that Ethians aren't so bad after all. After the king died, Prince Edward, of course, became the king, but unfortunately, he wasn't an Ethian, and this is when we start the story wherein there is a terrible gap between the Ethians and the Verities, where there's like a conflict between the two groups. And that's it for my non-spoilery section. If you guys haven't read My Lady Jane yet, I do recommend that you pick up this book and then come back after you've read it so that we can discuss more about it, because it's a book full of adventure and wit and humor, and it's just so worth it. So bye-bye. Okay, now on to the spoilery section. I'm so excited to get to this part because I just want to gush so much about this book. Now what's funny, when I was researching about the characters, like in actual history, Jane was called the 9 days queen, like literally 9 days queen, because she just became queen for 9 days before she was beheaded by Mary Tudor, who was the sister of King Edward. Now the true conflict is actually between the Catholics and the Protestants, because Mary is a devout Catholic and she truly hates the Protestants because Jane is a Protestant, and Jane tried to steal the kingdom from her. So naturally she started beheading these people. And that's where we compare the hatred between the Ethians and the Verities. Now we all knew that King Henry VIII transformed into a lion in this book, but as Edward and Jane grew up, because naturally they're cousins and they grew up together, they played together, they've always wanted to be Ethians as well, but unfortunately they haven't transformed. So they grew up thinking that they were normal, and then while they were grown up, we have Gifford, who was supposed to be Jane's betrothed, and he can turn into a horse, which is so important, because as we go along this story, we have read so many horse puns that are just actually hilarious. I like the part when Jane is engaged to Gifford and she was starting to think how he looked like, because she was so worried that Gifford would get his father's nose, because his father's nose was, I don't know, I think it was maybe huge, or I'm not sure. It was just described as a god-awful nose. And when she saw Stan Dudley for the first time, she thought that he was Gifford, and Stan unfortunately got his father's nose, which was so funny. And Jane was like, oh my gosh, seriously, this is my husband to be? She was so prejudiced against the nose. Here we have discovered that Gifford supposedly goes on his night trips, probably womanizing and drinking and so on and so forth, and he doesn't want his family to know that he actually goes to poetry readings, and he's actually a poet himself. And this is one of his secrets that he kept for so long that I don't know, if I was Gifford, to be honest, I would want my fiance to know what I've been doing, instead of letting her think that I've been going to meet other ladies. That's just so wrong. One of the things I admire here in this book is how pure Edward's love for Jane was and vice versa. I don't know if they realized that they were romantically in love with each other or just familial love, but I just really look up to how they love each other and how they're willing to trust each other. They just know what the other would think in some situations, and I really, really like that. Alright, let's go back to when Jane finally met Gifford, and whoa! Okay, so here's a description of Gifford according to the book. He was impressively tall and well-shaped around the neck and shoulders with glossy chestnut hair tied into a short ponytail. Boy! And expressive brown eyes, and his nose, it was perfectly shaped, not too long or short, not too plump or skinny, and even the pores were discreet. Wow, so detailed up to the pores. And she says here, there was no trace of the Dudley nose curse. This girl was just so focused on like wishing that he didn't have the Dudley nose curse, and it's just so funny. Now, I absolutely loved when Jane finally discovered that Gifford was a horse, and the horse jokes just kept coming and coming, and let me read a few of them, which is just so hilarious. You know, when before Gifford wanted to tell Jane that he was a horse, and he was imagining how he's gonna say it, and the dialogues were like this: my dear, you know those four-legged majestical beasts of the land? Well, you married one. My sweet, have you ever had a difficult time deciding between man or beast? Well, now you don't have to. Sweet lady, there are those of us who sleep lying down and those of us who sleep standing up. I can do both. And then the best one here is that he's gonna say, hey, what's that over there? And then he would gallop away, automatically transform into a horse. This was so funny. I really, really love these kinds of dialogues in this book. Now let's go to the part where Edward has a dog, right? It's like his best friend, his companion. And then this dog turns out to be a girl. And it's so funny how when the first time he saw this dog transform, the girl, of course, was naked. She doesn't care that she's naked, and she was just so focused on saving Edward. And I really like how they included her here because she was a very important part in the story. Her name is Petunia. So Petunia was the one who finally told Edward that his nursemaid, the one who took care of him since birth, was the one poisoning him. So that was a big shock for him, of course. One part that I really like about this book is that Gifford and Jane's love was working out slowly, and we know that it wasn't easy for them. It wasn't easy to establish a relationship even though they were already married. I love the fact that the authors did not really focus on love in this book. I appreciate how sometimes they fight and Jane always teases him with horse jokes, and it was just so hilarious. This is a fresh take on this historical fiction / romance, which is, a little bit less on the romance. #stop It's the Love 2K17. Now, when Edward was finally being plotted to be killed, he was imprisoned, and I think someone was trying to poison him at this point. And with the help of her sister, he was able to escape. But of course, that kind of pressure that was put on him finally made him realize that he was an Ethian, and the moment he jumped from the roof, he was able to fly. And then we discovered that in the long run, he was some kind of hawk. Not the strong kind of hawk, it was actually the weakest kind. Now fast forward to when Queen Mary wanted Jane to renounce Gifford as her husband because now everyone knew that Gifford was a horse. Now Queen Mary doesn't like Ethians. She thinks that they're an abomination, and she wanted Ethians to be killed. Now Jane has felt a sort of duty as a wife to Gifford. I don't think she truly loves him to this point, but she feels a sort of respect to him as her husband. She said here that Gifford Dudley was a good man, Ethian or not, and he was her husband for better or worse. I really, really loved this line here in this book. So once Jane declined that offer from the Queen, she and Gifford were imprisoned separately, and then we found out that she can transform into an animal. And at first I was so scared because there's this writing here that says she made a soft clucky sound, and I actually annotated here, lol, please, not a chicken. because clucky sound, that's from chicken. So I was just so nervous, like, is she gonna be a chicken? No way, no way. As we went along the clues here, like, there was this letter with the word skunk, and I was like, seriously, no, she cannot be a skunk. No, I will not allow it. And then later on, when Gifford said, Jane, you're a rat, and I figured out that she's a ferret because when I received my letters lit red package, this was the theme, and inside there was a pin called I love ferrets, and then I knew that she was gonna be a ferret. So it was really good because ferrets are cute. Now here's a tricky thing for this couple, because Gifford always transforms during the daytime. So when the sun rises, he becomes a horse. He cannot really control his transformation. Now, once Jane was able to transform into a ferret, her schedule was nighttime. So she changes into a ferret during nighttime, which is such a really unfortunate circumstance because they only have like literally a few minutes to spend time together where they can talk to each other, and that really made me sad. It was so frustrating to think about it. When Edward met Gracie, the fox, here in this story, it was sort of like an insta-love. I think he instantly fell in love at first sight at her, but it's understandable because he has never had any relationship in his entire life. I think he felt that he would be attracted to any girl that would try to communicate with him really well and then try to get to know him. And these two had some sort of a little adventure together as they tried to find his grandmother. Your boy just kept thinking of wanting to experience a first kiss, and then Gracie, of course, is a very attractive character in this book. I love the fact how every kiss in this book was intercepted except in the end part. Like, every time a couple tries to kiss, there's always an interruption, and it, like, seriously, this felt like a K-drama while I was reading through it. Let's talk about how Jane is so offended when someone calls her a rat, because she has been called a rat many times throughout this book, and she just rages, man. When Gifford went inside this bar and he told Jane to stay outside because it's not safe, and she was currently a ferret at that time. So Gifford was the one who went inside and tried to talk to some people, get some help, get some directions, and then someone said, "Rat, there's a rat." And he was like, "No, it can't be Jane. I told her to stay put." Someone said, "It's not a rat, you daft idiot. It's a squirrel. It's some kind of weasel." And then bullocks. This was the time that he knew that it was his wife. And then Gifford had to defend her and said, "She's a ferret. She's not a rat." But of course, this was when Jane became injured, and it was really heartbreaking for me. I didn't want her to die because there was blood, and then Jane the ferret was hurt and she was quiet, and she was never quiet according to Gifford. So I was a bit scared that she would die here or something, but I was feeling hopeful that she wouldn't because she's the main character. She's basically the title of the book. Now, when Jane was hurt, this was when she realized that she loved Gifford and she felt that Gifford loved her back, but neither of them said it out loud. I think they just felt it. Edward finally realized the love that Jane and Gifford shared between each other, and he really appreciated it, and he was finally able to accept their relationship as a couple. Now, in this time of history, men look at women differently. They think that women are, just fit to be in the kitchen doing all the household chores and not doing the actual work for the family. So this was when the authors addressed this kind of issue wherein they think that men can control women. But I love how the authors still included in this book when Gifford and Jane talked about how wrong it was to treat Jane like that. There was this instance here on page 426. Basically, Gifford locked Jane in a cage in order to protect her because she wanted to go with him to kill this bear or something. So he locked her and she didn't want to be locked. She was in ferret form at that time. So she was so angry, she was so mad. Eventually, when they came to talk with each other, they acknowledged that it was wrong and they discussed what their role as husband husband and wife should be. I like this dialogue here. Jane said, "As my husband, your duty is to respect me, to trust me. If I say I want to do something, you can't stop me just because I might get hurt. That's not living. I need to make my own decisions." I just appreciate how these themes are being addressed in this book, and somehow we know that it's the wrong thing and that they clearly explain it right here. Now, when they had their first kiss, Gifford and Jane, they only had like a few minutes together, remember? Because before they transform into an animal. Now, they actually realized that you can control the change by your strong will. And Jane was like begging for Gifford not to change back into a horse. Like, I think it was like the sun was coming up. She told him not to change. She said, please stay with me. And this was just really heartbreaking for me because she wanted to know if he truly loved her, and she didn't really feel it that way because in the end, Gifford still changed after that. Now let's go to the part where they first said "I love you" to each other. Let me show you when that happened. Yes, you can see here, this is the beginning part of the book, and this is the end. They said "I love you" on page 463. This is a freaking K-drama, you guys. We had our anticipation building up, and then we finally have the first "I love you" near the end. But we already know that they both love each other already. So Gifford was the one who said it. He said, "I love you." "You love me?" she whispered. And then he said, "The very instant I saw you, my heart flew to your service." And then she was like, "Really?" No, not exactly, but it's a good line, am I right? I really love how this was written. It's still very, very comical, no matter how cheesy it sounds. After they said "I love you" and the sun was already rising and they still kept talking. And then Jane was the first one to notice, and she was like, "Hey, the sun is up. You're still a man." "No, the sun can't be up. I'm still a man." Like, yeah, exactly. That's right. You're still a man. So they were just so happy that Gifford finally found his will to stay as a human. And I think their declaration of love was that key point in there. Now let's go to the part where this really surprising fact pushed through. We finally found out that Mary is an Ethian. And not only that, she's a donkey. And you know, her personality was already assy. And now she's a literal ass. So of course, Mary was taken out, and Edward decided that his sister Bess should be the rightful heir to the kingdom because he feels like he cannot really rule that country. And then of course he declared his love to Gracie, etc., etc. I love how they still inserted a bit of romance here in the end. Like, yeah, they were kissing and all that, and it was like so romantic. And then there was like P.S. they totally consummated. Big word. These were all the things that I really liked about My Lady Jane. I know I didn't really tell the whole plot as it is because I don't want to repeat what you've all just read. I just wanted to point out things that I really like about this book. Do you guys know any more books that are like My Lady Jane? Because I would love to read them. Please do comment below. I hope you like this video, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Bye!